a revenge mission, or they think they're freeing the world. Like if you like one of the best bad guys ever was the Joker in Dark Knight. That guy thought he was waking people up to the nature of humanity. These people will, it's like
Right.
I kill one little mayor and everyone goes insane. Like he was
Well,
making a point. He's like, a busload of soldiers blows up and no one gives a shit. He's like, one little mayor and everyone loses their mind. I'm like, yeah. But look at what he's doing. He's blowing up hospitals. He's got two ships. He's trying to show that everyone will eat each other. And so from one perspective, you're like, yeah, that's the bad guy. But in his mind, he's like, I'm showing you the truth about human nature. And that's why, like, some of these truthers, it's kind of like the truthers right now sharing the trans porn are like, I'm waking people up. But if you take one more step back, they're the bad guy. They're now normalizing trans porn on a public platform.
yeah. So in all of, because I love reading. I love reading basically nonfiction from throughout history. And I started seeing these patterns, and I feel like there is an understanding, there's a universal truth that most people live a life of mediocrity when they could be living greater. But most people at any given time are going to choose conformity, are going to choose to be average. Even though they know deep within themselves, they have an immense potential that they could live up to and could reach, they never do it. And about 5% of people are always the ones who really strive for something, achieve something in life. And I think that this might be what the secret societies are about, is understanding human nature and understanding that most people are just going along to get along no matter when they exist. And so there's a management system at work. They created a management, they've created a society. If you look at it like, okay,
Like farming.
put yourself in these people's shoes and thinking that they have good intentions. They've created a society where things are pretty comfortable. Like the average way of life for a person who is not doing so well financially is still doing all right. Like they can get food, they have TV, they have air conditioning, they have all their needs met.
Totally.
And I think that the person who's in that position of power is like, look what I've given you. Like you, who I know based off of the law of life is destined to be never rising up from where you are. And yet you're complaining.
That's exactly it. Because I saw a meme today and I actually responded with the answer. And I realized a lot of people don't actually want the answer. But somebody was like, there's these two pictures. And one was, John Wick with glowing eyes. And it said a tax on tea. And then now it was like 40% tax. And it was Winnie the Pooh like asleep. And it was like, what happened to people? And I responded, I said, the first one was with the gold standard. So back then, the money supply was very tight. So a tax hurt really bad. Like a 1% tax was nuts. But that's because there was a limited amount of money. And you had to be more productive than you consumed to have any money. Now that we have fiat nonsense money and it's just flowing everywhere and everybody can be so comfortable. I mean, when America was founded, people were starving in the streets. Like that was a standard way of life where if you didn't work hard enough, your kids died. Like your kids starved to death. So now that we have fiat currency, if someone's like 40% taxes, no one really cares because it's not really money. If it's backed by gold, 1% tax is like, that might mean you starve to death. And so I was explaining it to people and they're like, and I'm just like, that's the truth though. And when people want to say on the Fed and bring back the gold standard, I'm like, you have to produce more than you consume in the gold standard. And 95, as you said, I'd say it's about 95% don't. And there are a lot of productive people, but they like to understand how much productivity has to go in for the consumption that we currently have is mind blowing. Right. And so, yeah, if you are one of these quote unquote elites, they would say, look at what I've given you and look at how ungrateful you are. I'm going to call the herd. There's too many useless eaters.
Right. So in their mind, they're being benevolent. They're serving the common man by giving them a comfortable life in spite of themselves.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that like after, this is me just contemplating this in real time.
Right. I know you're not backing them, but this is a good exercise to do.
And the other thing that I've learned is that the keys to living a successful life, like really, not only being successful, being like astronomically successful, having all the wealth and all the success you could ever want, those secrets aren't hidden. They're right there for anyone to take at any point in time. They can just pick up a book because successful people throughout history will tell you exactly how they became successful. It's free. Wisdom is free. It's not hidden. It's not being kept from us. It may be not taught in public school, but it's available to you if you choose to find it. And you can take it and you can internalize it and you can succeed. You know what they always say? Don't complain and don't blame anybody else for your problems. There's like the two rules. Stop complaining and stop blaming. Take responsibility for your own life. Circumstances are what you make of them, and you can excel. You can if you choose it, but you have to choose it, and rarely anyone ever does.
Yeah, and never say stuff like, must be nice.
Well, exactly. I mean, they also say superstition is a result of fear. There's no such thing as superstition. Fate, it doesn't exist, and luck doesn't exist. It's all about what you put in. You put in what you get out.
Yeah, you reap what you sow, yeah. And also, if you think outwardly, like you think, what can I do to help other people? What can I do to better serve my people? What can I do to make a better product? Versus like, why am I getting fucked over? Why don't I have a bigger car? Why does no one want to see my dick? Like those thoughts are cancer. And so,
right.
And the irony is the times I descend are when other people are doing that to me, but ironically that makes me like that in brief moments and I have to get out of it. Like when a bunch of people around me are like, might be nice, you steal all your money, you're lying, you're trans. And then I'm like, why do I have to be surrounded by all these fucking, and then I'm like, oh, I'm doing it again. Like I have to see it as an opportunity to grow where it's like, okay, how do I work on my communication skills?
That's the key. And everything, literally everything is an opportunity to grow.
Yeah.
Every single thing. If you think about it, like people, and that's why I don't like this whole, not the victim mentality that's everywhere is so cancerous because it teaches people not to learn from their mistakes or from their challenges or from their trauma. There's all this focus on trauma, but trauma can help you grow just like anything else. And you can help others deal with their stuff. Like it's all an opportunity if you choose to see it as opportunity. And I mean everything. And that's one of the keys. But again, you have to like choose that. And I'm talking, I was guilty of being that like victim mentality truther for a long time. When I first started waking up, and waking up is a term I don't even like anymore. I think that's an elitist way to look at it. Like, well, I'm awake because I am willing to acknowledge that there are problems in the world. Like, come on. But I was that way. I was like, well, stupid government, and take it.
Yeah, I'm not like that at all anymore.
It's like you can internalize anything and grow from it, and then help others as well. Like it's always a choice.
That's so fucking true, man. And you're right. It's not hidden, and that's how that all works. When it's like when people are like, oh, they're hiding it, it's secret. It's like they'll do like a public address about exactly what they're planning on doing, and people are like, yeah, like I listen to Uneducated Economists, and all he does is listen to what the Fed does speeches on. He's like, don't watch politics. That's like literally a puppet show. He's like, the Fed will literally do a speech telling you exactly what they're going to do. Then they do it, and everyone freaks out. It's like, and then ask yourself, like, here's an interesting thing to ponder. If you learned, like, look at COVID. Like, what if they didn't do COVID and sever the supply chain and do the economic lockdown and pump the economy with the CARE Act and all that stuff? What if you had the knowledge that if they did not do that, the entire economy would have completely collapsed like Great Depression shit? Like, and someone sat you in a room and said, what would you do? That's not as easy as a lot of truthers want to say, where it's like, okay, let's say 40% of the population would starve to death if we didn't do this crazy manipulation, like even 9/11. So let's say Gaddafi, and again, I know that there's an evil element to this. We do have a demonic system when it comes to all this comfort.
Absolutely.
Like what we were just explaining isn't good. But these people could sit back and say, we've given you all this comfort. The laziest people can still have cell phones. Like homeless people can have cell phones. Where's the gratitude? So to keep that going, let's say you have Gaddafi, he's trying to go on a gold standard, or like the dinar, you have like Saddam Hussein wants to sell oil and gold. If they didn't kill them, the dollar, we would have less of an ability to keep those people satisfied and potentially have an overthrow of the system and 100 million people die. Like they war game this shit out. And so then I would say I would rather get back to a more honest way of life, even if that included poverty for myself. Like I've made that decision, but I do see it as it's a lot harder of a decision than a lot of truthers want to admit. It's like, you will see people starving in the street if other countries were allowed to challenge the dollar, because our only export is debt on treasury. So it's like, do you even, like, they're not even at that level yet. They're like, money fake, government sucks, the Jews are sneaky. I'm like, but like, are you willing?
They're mad that everyone else isn't up to their speed. They're like, well, we need everyone to wake up so we can change this one problem, which essentially means I need everybody else to wake up so that my life can get better.
Right, exactly. And the irony is, if everyone were to wake up, the system would fail and that truther would starve. Like, imagine if everybody woke up, quote unquote, and they just got like bitter and truthery and didn't trust anything and didn't use money and like hoarded everything. Like, the whole system would collapse. Like, it's good that there's sheeple, as long as people are still like learning about self-sufficiency and making their own communities. Like, what we're doing is really good. Like, making our own communities, being helpful, figuring out farming, because we have some time. I don't think anything's happening anytime soon. And so the more we do that, if it does collapse, we'll be in a much better situation. But if right now it collapsed, all these truthers begging for everyone to wake up, they would be careful what they wish for, because I don't think they're in any position to handle what would come.
Well, I agree. And I think that, if there's an issue that a person is really, if it's an issue they're willing to, the hill they're willing to die on, they have the power inside of them to be a resistance towards that thing if they choose to accept it. Like, if that's your thing, like, this is the thing I think is most important. The biggest problem in the world, and I want to do something about it. You can do something about it, but you have to choose to accept the assignment. You have to choose and not just wait for everyone else to see it like you, because that's not going to solve anything. But if it's that important to you, if you focus on it and set it as a goal, and you don't quit until you achieve it, you can do something about it.
Yeah, like I used to feel like if everybody wasn't taller, I would never be happy. Like, every time I see a short man, I'm like, why can't you drink milk? Like, it infuriates me. I'm like, what are you, a rat? Like, what do you live under a car? But then I realized that people are not going to grow, that they're just the height that they're supposed to be, and it doesn't affect me. In fact, it makes me more valuable. Like, I can reach all the shelving that they can't. I can carry the weight. Codsworth is my butler. Do we have any super chat?